All right, let's just jump right in. We have all been there, right? You're just driving along, minding your own business, and then bam, that little amber light pops up on your dashboard. Yup, the check engine light. And with it comes that sinking feeling in your stomach. But what if I told you we could crack the code behind it together? Today we're taking on one specific code, P0073.
It really does feel like your car is trying to talk to you in some kind of secret language, and the first thing that always goes through your head is, oh no, is this going to be expensive? Well, today we're going to be detectives. We have our code, P0073. Think of this as our first big clue in a mystery. So let's get to it and figure out what exactly your car is trying to say.
So our investigation has to start with understanding the code itself. This is really the key that's going to unlock this whole thing.
Okay, so the official technical definition is ambient air temperature sensor circuit high input. I know, that sounds like a total mouthful, but don't worry about it. The only part you really need to focus on is ambient air temperature sensor and high input. We're going to break down exactly what that means.
Let's just translate that into plain English. What's happening is your car's main computer is getting a signal that's basically stuck on high. And for this particular sensor, a high voltage signal means one thing. It thinks it's incredibly, almost impossibly cold outside. And just how cold are we talking about? Well, a lot of the time the computer's getting a reading of -40 degrees. So, unless you happen to be driving through the middle of an Arctic expedition, your car's computer is smart enough to know that something is definitely not right with that number. So where is this crazy reading even coming from? It's all thanks to the Ambient Air Temperature Sensor, or AAT sensor for short. The easiest way to think about it is as your car's own personal outdoor thermometer. Its entire job is just to tell the car how hot or cold it is outside.
So where is this little guy hiding? Well, you're almost always going to find it right at the very front of the car. It needs to be there to get a good, clean read of the air coming at you. So have a look behind the front grille, maybe down near the front bumper or just in front of the radiator. They put it there so it doesn't get messed up by engine heat.
Okay, so now we know what the code means. Let's start looking at the other pieces of evidence. What are the real-world symptoms you're actually going to notice when you're behind the wheel?
The trail of clues here is usually pretty obvious. First, of course, the check engine light is on. But then you'll probably notice your car's temperature display on the dash is stuck on that crazy low number, like -40. And because your car thinks it's in a deep freeze, your AC or your automatic climate control might just refuse to work right. It's trying to blast the heat for a blizzard that just isn't happening.
All right, we've got the code, we've got the symptoms. It is time to line up our suspects. What could actually be causing this P0073 code to pop up?
Now, this right here is our biggest clue yet. Just look at that. In about 70% of cases, the vast majority, the problem is just the sensor itself. And that's fantastic news, because that is usually the easiest and cheapest thing to fix. After that, we've got wiring issues, and way down the list are things like a bad connector or a faulty computer.
So let's run down the lineup. Suspect number 1, our most wanted, is the sensor itself. It probably just failed. Suspect number 2 is the wiring. Maybe a wire is broken, creating an open circuit, or it's touching something it shouldn't be. Suspect 3 is the connector. Moisture and gunk can get in there and cause problems. And our last, and by far the least likely suspect, is the car's main computer. It's possible, sure, but we always check the other guys first.
So we've lined up our suspects. Now it's time to get our hands dirty. Let's walk through how a real detective, or, a mechanic, would actually investigate this case.
The process here is actually really logical. We're going to start with the easiest thing first and then work our way up if we need to. It's a simple 3-step investigation. First, a visual check. Then, looking at live data with a scan tool, and finally testing things out with a multimeter. Step 1 is literally just using your eyes. Go find that sensor at the front of the car and get a really good look at its wiring and the plug it connects to. Do you see any wires that look frayed or maybe melted? Is the connector all green and crusty with corrosion? You'd be surprised how often the problem is just sitting there right in plain sight.
Now here's a cool DIY trick. The sensor is what's called a thermistor. That's just a fancy name for a resistor that changes based on temperature. So as the quote suggests, you can actually test it pretty easily. Just gently warm up the sensor with something like a hairdryer and watch the resistance reading. If the numbers change, the sensor's probably okay. If it's stuck, well, you've probably just found your culprit.
And if you want to be absolutely sure, that's where the multimeter comes in.
This slide pretty much tells you everything you need to know. With the key on, you should see about 5 volts at the connector. For the sensor itself, a good one will have a resistance reading that moves up and down as it gets warmer or cooler. A bad one? It'll probably read OL, which just means open loop or a broken circuit, or the number will just be completely stuck.
All right, we've done our detective work, we've gathered the evidence, and we have identified the guilty party. Now it's time to close this case and apply the fix.
So, depending on what your investigation turned up, the solution is going to be one of these 3 things. You might just need to repair a broken wire, or maybe clean out a dirty connector. But most of the time, you're just going to replace the sensor itself. And the great news is, the sensor is usually a really cheap part, and it's often super easy to swap out.
But hey, don't close the case file just yet. After you do the repair, you have to confirm that it worked. First, grab a scan tool and clear that P0073 code out of the car's memory. Then, just take the car for a drive. If that check engine light stays off and your temperature display is showing the right temp, congratulations, you can officially declare this case closed.
So really, who knew a simple little thermometer could cause all this trouble? It just goes to show you how all the systems in modern cars are connected. We started with a mysterious light on the dash, and our investigation led us all the way to a single, faulty sensor. It proves that cracking the code is really just about knowing where to look for the clues.